This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Here, we explore the taboo and paradoxical aspects of society. I explore the topics people think about but don't ask about. The results give you the nuanced answers you crave, not just the Google results making headlines. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to make a more curious future for everyone. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're a repeat curiositor, welcome back. Since you're here again, it would mean a lot to me if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast. Now, this is more than me just pining for compliments, although, full confession, I totally am. A healthy collection of ratings and reviews shows high-level prospective guests that the show is worth their time, which means you get even better content to get curious on. Okay, so this week's topic is one that we'd like to offer thoughts and prayers on, but one that we're not really allowed to ask questions about, and that is cancer. My guest goes over which exercises create the greatest immune response, the difficulty of creating athletic mindsets in sick patients, the legality of prescribing exercise, over versus underdoing exercise, and the two questions that everyone with cancer should be asking their doctor. That one's at the very, very end. And if you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one I did with the medical doctor who has served as an expert in medical litigation and served as a consultant for the FBI and U.S. Department of Justice. We talk about, is there hope for the American medical system? That's episode 242. All right, friends, keep it curious. Despite the fancy cancer treatment centers, no-shave Novembers, and awareness walks, cancer is still the second leading cause of death for Americans. While we send thoughts and prayers to our friends putting on a brave face, we also whisper to ourselves, what are we missing? My next guest is the founder and chief scientific officer of Causenta Cancer Treatment Center. He not only has a number of published researches and serves as a reviewer for peer-reviewed journals, he's also the guy that the heads of big cancer centers go to for treatment when they have cancer. He's combined his diverse academic and personalized medicine backgrounds to develop cutting-edge treatment protocols for patients with cancer that include exercise plans. Today, he's going to help us know what we don't know as we ask the question, what is the correlation between exercise and cancer? Passionate for patient wellness, the sciencey and the sporty, Dr. Tom Incledon. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. That was a really good intro.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you liked it. You were such an interesting person because, on the show, we like to feature people that have high contrast. They are the this and the that. And I love that you fit exactly in that area because you are a researcher who works with patients, not just writes papers. You are someone who is interested in wellness, not just paying the bills. And you're also an athlete. You were an Olympic power lifter, weightlifting, set national records in strongman competitions. You're an athlete, but why choose to work with people who are not athletes? Why choose to work with people who are at their worst, not at their best? What's the interest for you?
Well, so years ago, I was working with some NFL athletes, and one of the guys got cancer. And I was already working with cancer patients, but no one ever really knew that because when a regular person has a disease and they leave your center, but when it's a celebrity-like person, like an athlete that people see, playing football on Sundays, everybody just sees, these guys coming and go, and they think, oh, you work with these famous people or these athletes. And it never occurs to them, some people, some celebrities, some athletes, they get cancer too. And then I started looking at all the resources this guy had as an athlete, and I looked at the resources he had as a cancer patient, and they weren't the same. And then I started thinking to myself, wow, this is so backwards. I have nothing against, the resources available for athletes, but you would think if someone's got a terrible illness and they're told this is really serious, you would think that the resources would be aligned to figure out how to help them. But instead, everything is set up so there's a plan before they even know what details are driving the disease process. So it's kind of the equivalent of you saying, hey, my car broke down. And I go, well, here's what we're going to do. And you're like, but that's not even the problem with my car. It would make no
Right.
sense. So like a simple example would be like, I'm like, here's oil. And you're like, but I have a flat tire. Like, how is that going to help my tire? For the automobile analogy. And yet with cancer, what you see is a standard of care model, and there's all these things happening. And then if you ask, like particularly women with breast cancer, they ask a lot of questions. Why are you telling me to cut off my breasts and remove my body parts? And then they find out it doesn't matter if it's stage 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're getting the same recommendations. And then you say, well, how is that specific for what I'm dealing with? And you're not an individual. You're just a number in the system.
Mm.
So I wanted to do something that I thought would make a bigger impact. And then I was connected to cancer because my babysitter had passed away from brain cancer when I was very young. And back then, as a young boy, I didn't know what cancer was. Everybody was like, what's cancer? I contrast that with today. So almost 50 years later, no one ever asked me what's cancer. Everyone already knows that. Everyone I encounter already has either directly had cancer or they've been exposed to someone in their personal life that has passed away from cancer. And you'd think, wow, despite all these people with cancer, you don't really see the attention given to it like that's been given to, say, COVID and things like that from the past.
Well, the attention is that I see just as a regular person is on, like pink ribbons and like community, and community is important. But I always kind of wonder quietly, because it feels like a taboo question to ask. Is no one concerned about like, how is this happening? Or, the reoccurrence of cancer after traditional chemo rounds. Why are those questions not being asked? So I think it's interesting that you're approaching it from a totally different vantage point.
So you brought up something that triggered a thought. So years ago, I watched this woman. She's lost all her hair, beautiful woman, lose all her hair. She's got the scarf on her head and she's struggling to walk to ring the bell and everybody's celebrating. And she, came then to my center to get stronger. And she's like, what do you think of all this? She showed me the video. I said, I got nothing against you trying to beat this terrible disease. I really don't. But I find it completely offensive that we're celebrating that all these other areas of your health have been sabotaged. You lost all your hair. You can't think clearly. You have heart damage. You have liver damage. You have bone damage. You have issues with hormone function. But we're saying, hey, you walked and touched the bell. And that to me is an example of medicine failing. That is not an example of medicine succeeding. What my expectations would be as someone that's intelligent, as someone who has resources that are aligned, not only are you beating the cancer, but you should look better than ever before in your life. You should be physically capable of doing more than ever before in your life. It's kind of like you got one check and you got like 10 minuses, right? And we're saying, oh, this is a win. It's like, no, that's not a win. If this was a sports team, you don't say, oh, coach, I caught the ball. You're like, but you didn't score. Like, it doesn't matter,
Sure.
And that's what I thought is that it almost seems like we're allowing these side effects in the pursuit of a singular goal without looking at the rest of the health of the human being. So when we started doing strength training, we started adding all the exercise with oxygen, all these therapies. And I'm telling people, you're going to do 1,000 calories in a workout. Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone's like, this guy's a quack. Until everyone started actually doing 1,000 calories in their workouts. And
what do you mean 1,000 calories in the workout?
So let's say you're working out on a machine and you look at the calorie counter and it tells you how many calories you're burning, So like each minute you're burning so many calories, and as the time goes on. So what I started realizing is that a lot of people had lowered their standards and their goals. And if we were to say, look, you are capable of doing anything you put your mind to, so why would you settle for a lesser version of yourself? Why don't we see how good you can be? And we, kind of added like that positive energy aspect to it. And then we started creating this community where I literally had like, petite woman crushing it on EWAT, moving 400 pounds of resistance. And now you got the next person with cancer walking through the door. They're in a wheelchair. They're barely standing. And they're watching this woman and they're intimidated by her. And so now the guy's like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I said, well, why don't you wait till she's done working out? And why don't you talk to her? She's saying, yeah, I came here in a wheelchair. I couldn't stand. And now look at me. And he's like, really? Like, it was really difficult for people to accept that this is possible with a human body. And part of it is because when they go to the hospital, they go see their oncologist. Well, I should say their practitioner, nurse practitioner, or the PA. They don't really see the oncologist that often. Mm-hmm. When they see the healthcare professional, everyone's like, be careful, don't get hurt. So they're very fear-based in their approach. And then what ends up happening is everyone becomes so guarded and afraid of getting hurt, they don't really put effort into what they're doing. So they're doing chair exercises. Nothing wrong with that if you can't move. But once you're capable of doing chair exercises, you need progression. You need to move to something that's more physically challenging. And as we move people to more physically challenging movement patterns, what you see is they're adding muscle, and in half the patients, their tumors are shrinking. And then we look at simultaneous data that other researchers have published that moving very fast, like sprinting, and lifting very heavy weights, it creates shear forces that kill cancer cells that are in circulation. And, anyone could do this. Like you could do push-ups and progress to one-arm push-up on your own. You don't need to spend money. So you would say all these cancer treatment centers that are so, allegedly focused on treating cancer, how come none of them have an exercise component? And then you get into some really controversial debates like, is that really what they're trying to do, is beat cancer? Or has their system evolved where they're trying to maintain the disease so they can maximize the lifetime revenue per patient? And what we started seeing is our average patient, we can get to NED in maybe 6 weeks, possibly 8 weeks. And then other centers, years, the same cancers people are dealing with.
And what's NAD?
No evidence of disease. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources that people have available that don't even require a doctor or a hospital, but they don't really get the exposure and they don't get guidelines. So for example, you could go on the internet and you can search for all kinds of exercise equipment, but try to find guidelines on what to do with that equipment to fight your cancer once you get home. Or if you go to the gym, you're getting recommendations based on people that read stuff online, but never actually have the experience of testing a human being and tracking objective measures in their body over time to see the results. So one of the reasons why we get such amazing outcomes here, I don't read something stupid on the internet that says, take ivermectin to beat cancer and then tell everybody what I just read. Instead, what I say is I'm talking to someone, I discovered very unique mutations in your body. And based on what we understand about these genes that are driving your cancer, here are the best weapons that we could think of to fight those specific mutations. And then we're checking to see if it's working. And if it works, well, then we stick with the plan. And if it doesn't work, we change what we're doing. And that right there is probably like the real secret sauce of why the outcomes we have are so amazing.
There's so many questions that I have. Okay, first question is about what you were telling me, the woman ringing the bell, completing her chemo treatment. Are you anti-chemo?
No, not at all. I think I'm pro-survival. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to help a patient live and whatever resources are available. I think the way chemo is often done, I think is medically irresponsible. I think the side effects that are generated could easily be avoided if the doctor was actually present during the chemo session and monitoring the patient properly. So if you were, let's say, hypothetically, I have this patient and they're in front of me and I'm with my oncologist, they're actually there during the infusion. They're not delegating it to someone else and disappearing. And then what you would say is this person's, they look like they're sweating or they look like they're getting nauseous. Let's lower the infusion rate. Because if the threshold of, if the drug is reaching a very high level in that person's blood, it's probably overkill. It's probably more than they need. So something as simple as slowing down the infusion rate could reduce side effects. Instead, what normally happens is the concern is getting, so many butts in a chair per day. So you're flooding these drugs into people, and then you're managing the symptoms with additional drugs. And that's something that I think is just medically irresponsible, although it's common.
Well, it is common. You're talking about the business of cancer. For people who want to prevent cancer, who are trying to support loved ones through it, or who are going through it themselves, What should we know about the business of cancer?
So the algorithms that are developed, they're based on people with MBAs looking at decisions. So an example would be, let's say you're lying in a hospital bed and you're getting some IV solution that has glucose. Your glucose levels run high because you're not moving, you're just laying there. Almost every single institution, instead of slowing down the infusion rate of the glucose, what they do is they then add insulin to it. So now they're billing insurance for the infusion, the IV of the glucose, and they're billing for the insulin. And you're like, well, this person doesn't have diabetes. They never had high glucose before. Why are we giving them insulin? So that's what I mean by like the policies that are created. They're not based off of optimal biological responses. They're based off of what generates revenue. So another example would be like anyone that has any illness, movement costs very little. You could easily lead a movement program at any hospital in the world. And you could create a community environment where hundreds of people could be working out together and supporting each other in numerous ways. Instead of doing that, the first thing people are going to get is drugs. And then they're going to be told, oh, don't push yourself because you're tired. Get some rest. And then what happens once we get too much rest, we lose muscle. We have atrophy of our brain. We lose the ability to control our body. And then as we get weaker, you get more drugs added to the mix. And so it's not really a health journey that most people would embrace if they could see all those components outlined in front of them. One of the things, you mentioned about supporting loved ones. One of the things I see a lot that I really would caution any family, any couple, when an individual has cancer, the best way to help that person is to ask them what they want to do. It's not to tell them what to do. I see a lot of times, particularly like a husband and wife scenario, where one person, really loves their partner and they don't want to see anything happen to them. And then they do their own research, right? And so they have like a different interpretation of what they've uncovered. And then their partner has maybe read what they've read and they have a different version of what they want to do. So a common example would be, I see a lot of women now with two cancers. So they have breast cancer, they may have lung cancer, or they may have two different types of breast cancers. So I just spoke to a woman for the weekend, and her mindset was like, look, I've got this tiny lump. I'm just going to remove my breast because I want this out of me. And that's where my head is at right now. And her husband's like, don't rush to surgery, be careful, etc. And I happen to know the guy pretty well. I was like, look, man, this is not about you deciding what your wife should do. This is about you trying to understand what does she need to feel comfortable, because it's an overwhelming journey. There's no one that knows the answers before the journey begins. And there's no crystal ball. You go to any scientist in the world, there's no guarantees of what will happen, because the research that's been done early on with cancer, it's so flawed and biased. There's going to be a lot of error along the way, along this journey. And that's why direct measurement of the individual is so important. You don't want to extrapolate data from other people. And now what do most people do? They see the doctor tells them about success rates. And all that data is from other humans. It's not from the individual in the chair in front of them. And it convinces people to make a lot of choices that probably won't be in their best interest long term.
Is there a certain type of exercise that is good for everyone trying to beat cancer, or are there specific protocols for specific types of cancer?
Basically, one thing right now I would recommend for everyone, so it's real simple and straightforward. An elliptical device, and people would say, why an elliptical? Because you're moving the greatest amount of muscle, you're moving 4 limbs. Now, could there be other exercises that involve more muscle mass? There probably is, but I haven't been able to test everything ever discovered. So I have treadmill, stationary bicycle, recumbent bicycle, and then the sort of bikes we have like upper body, lower body components, and an elliptical. The elliptical produced the greatest responses, and responses in this context increase the immune cells that fight cancer to the greatest extent. So we actually measured in real humans increases in cytotoxic T lymphocytes and natural killer cells in a range of 27 million to 27 billion in 15 minutes of exercise. So any person, we can get started immediately and basically stimulate the immune cells to come out of the spleen, go out in circulation and kill cancer cells in circulation. And then we have people breathing in oxygen while they exercise. So that sort of model is referred to as exercise with oxygen therapy. The reason why that's so important is the oxygen allows people to push themselves physically past their current ability. So typically, let's just say you could move or you could lift so much or generate so much resistance or speed. When you're breathing in the oxygen, you go about 10 to 25% further or faster, and you could sustain that. So the oxygen helps you recover very rapidly so you can maintain a very high work output. And then additional stimulation from work is which stimulates hormones from the adrenal glands, specifically epinephrine, and the epinephrine stimulates the spleen to release the immune cells that can kind of go out. Think of them as like piranha going out killing, cancer cells. And it works really well. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of patients reduce the burden of disease, the burden of cancer in their body by 50% just from doing the exercise with oxygen. And this has been known since the 1940s that it's very powerful. And it kind of raises the question again, why aren't centers all over the world doing it? Not only doing it, but think of it this way. Let's say I told you, hey, this works. When you walk through our door, I don't just say it works and ignore you. We're actually drawing your blood and making sure it does work, right? It's kind of like, using an automobile analogy. If your mechanic said the car's fine, at some point you got to drive the car to see if it's running fine. And, in medicine, what we usually do is we try to measure things objectively. So not only did we do something we believe to work, but we verify for the individual objectively, hey, it is working, your immune markers are improving, and the cancer markers are going down, right? So that would be kind of like how we might define working in this context.
So for the average person who can't go to Arizona and go to Causenta, and they are already in the middle of their cancer treatment or they're approaching their cancer treatment, how can they put themselves more in the driver's seat of their own treatment without becoming that person that's like, I read on the internet, how do you navigate that? Do you just go for walks because, oxygen assisted workouts are not at 24-hour fitness? Like, how does the average person get access to these benefits without getting kicked out for being a non-compliant patient out of their doctor's office?
Yeah, so you got two different worlds. And so medicine right now has overwhelming bias by the drug industry. And it's clear as day, kids going to medical school want to heal the world. They come out and then we have beliefs like these guys can't be helped. These guys, the only option is drugs. And like whatever happened to exercise, like it's totally ignored. So it's never going to really be a conversation you can have with your medical oncologist. Some of the younger docs, I think, now are getting more open-minded to it. But a lot of the older docs, they're just really into the drugs more than anything. As far as what people could do, say, in the middle of treatment, one of the first things people should do is kind of find out, like, am I doing the right treatment? You got to remember, most people don't survive. The reason why they don't survive is because the treatment plan was developed based on their label, not on the specific drivers of the cancer in their body. And unfortunately, if you go on the internet, you're going to read nonsense like frankincense treats cancer, ivermectin treats cancer. And what should happen is once people read any article that says something that simple, they should realize it's not really personalized for them because it's a generic statement. And we already know there isn't anything that works 100% for all people. So I'd probably recommend is people go to our website, sign up, get the free information we provide. And then if it fits their budget or if it fits their, mindset, they can book a consult and at least get pointed in the right direction. We've helped thousands of people all over the world just to kind of reevaluate if what they're doing is even going to be effective. Because the idea that you're just going to buy something off the internet and start doing it and magically your cancer will be gone, that's really foolish. It's just so many possibilities for you to find like the 1 out of a billion chance, that will help you.
Over 70%-ish of Americans are overweight or obese. How do you help those patients who are obviously non-athletic have what essentially is an athletic mindset when it comes to becoming a scientist of your own health? And okay, we're going to track this and we're going to track that and we're going to make an effort here and make an effort there. Those are all athletic concepts that the average person who has been conditioned to a passive role in their healthcare does not understand. Like, how do you help overcome that mental part of it?
So I think on an individual basis, I would find out what makes that individual tick and what do they get fun or pleasure and enjoyment out of doing. Not everybody likes to work out, but most people do like results, no matter what those results are. And if we could connect where they are to the result they want and then figure out how to make with the process fun. Like in the past, what I've done, I've had a lot of patients that hated working out. So I don't want to do it. But they liked walking the dog. They liked playing with their grandchildren. They could do that all day because they got fun out of that. So then we would say, okay, let's work with what you're willing to do. And then as people get results, typically one observation I made many, many years ago, the more fit and healthy you become, the less pleasure you get out of sitting still and doing nothing. Typically, when a body feels good, you want to explore more things because it feels good to do those things. So someone has pain, they're not going to say, hey, let's go out, get up and go hiking. But someone that can move well, they're like, hey, let's go hiking today, because there's a certain pleasure or reward they get out of those physical experiences. So in terms of like, if I had to make policies or guidelines for everyone, I would say when you wake up in the morning, just try to move, do something. And then that movement would be whatever doesn't hurt you. So if walking, let's say, hurts someone's hips or knees, well, then maybe we could start off with some simple floor exercises and even things like planks. You can see on the internet a lot of cool movement patterns. There's lots of guys showing how they took like, basic push-ups or side planks and create all these other movements out of them. So you don't have to leave your home, and you could actually get enough stimulation of your muscle and burn enough calories just like, and basically, in a living room floor. So that would be, how you would start incorporating movement in. And so I'd say something every morning. And then after you're done eating for the day, try to do some light movement after that to help burn excess calories. And then that will combat metabolic issues like obesity, diabetes, to reduce the likelihood of cancer as well.
Is cancer a metabolic disease?
Well, I guess depends on what research data you're looking at, So the basic definition of cancer is its uncontrolled proliferation of cells. In other words, a cell lost its ability of contact inhibition. Instead of like hitting a boundary and stopping, it hits this boundary and says, I want to grow anyway, and keep dividing and dividing and dividing. So that would be like the very simple form of cancer. Now, in terms of what is making these cells continue to grow when under normal conditions, a cell would not be dividing and growing, then you might say, well, it's this gene. And then you might say, well, that gene controls these set of proteins that affect the mitochondria. And you might say within the mitochondria, there's this oxidative stress, or within the mitochondria, there's this dysfunction in various metabolic pathways. So I think it's overly simplistic. It's kind of like if you have 100 dominoes knocking into one another and you pick one and say, that's the cause of it all. I think that is maybe overly simplifying things. And one of my pet peeves about research and the way things are done, things get oversimplified to get money. So imagine you're the head of NIH and I come to you and I say, look, I need $10 million and I need about 20 years to figure out this complex problem. And then you go, well, when you have some data, come back. Versus I come to you and go, guess what? I figured out how cancer cells spread and I need $10 million right now. And I got something to show you. And you go, here's the money. So what's happening right now, most of the studies done are so flawed. They're not really helpful. And these studies are the basis for AI. And everybody's like, oh, AI is going to do this and that. And they're missing out that a study is done in a simplified environment so you can prove a cause and effect to get some more money. And in that simplified environment, now what you've eliminated is things like environmental toxins, PFAS compounds, mycotoxins, heavy metals. So you have basically like a very overly clean environment that no human actually has in their body. right? And then how are we going to say, what does that mean? So anyway, there's a lot of concerns about how studies are being done and do they really represent what real people are encountering? And, that's a whole other podcast. You have to bring me back.
Okay. I'll think about it. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think there's like a human tendency to love shiny things. And
Oh, sure. Yeah.
AI solving cancer, the robots will save us. That is a really shiny thing. And sorry, going for a walk on elliptical, not so shiny. But here's my question to you, because you have lots of oncologist friends, colleagues. If simply walking, whether it's on an elliptical or in their neighborhood, whatever is accessible to that patient, would at least help increase the positive outcomes alongside of whatever traditional treatment plan that oncologist has given to that patient. Why are doctors not saying, hey, get out and walk? Are they not allowed to say, hey, you should probably exercise? Is it not permitted?
So there's definitely a lot of fear of litigation, fear of liability, fear of just not wanting to hurt someone. So imagine you're my doctor and I come in struggling to walk and you got 8 to 15 minutes to help me. And most of your background education is about drugs. What's your go-to to help me? Your go-to is going to be drugs. Tom, here's this drug to help you with your cancer. You don't have enough time to even talk to me about exercise. And then in the policies of the institution, remember, in an insurance-based model, it's not about what's best for you as an individual. So let's just say you needed some electrical stimulation of the quadriceps on one leg to get it as strong as the quadriceps on the other leg. Right. And a lot of people have neurological compensations they don't even know about. But the way our model is set up, or I should say the way the FDA approval model is set up, a doctor can't recommend that treatment to help someone get stronger to fight cancer because that would be a claim the FDA has not approved. In order for you to get that help, you would have to see a physical therapist or neurologist and be diagnosed with another medical condition in order to get competent physical therapy or some kind of exercise prescription with a competent professional help you. And so what happens is the system overcomplicates things and you're bounced around and now you're stuck waiting hours every appointment and you just say this is too much. And then meanwhile, remember, you're struggling to move around, right?
Right.
And so what should happen is that in an ideal world, I guess, when people come in, you'd have multiple professionals involved in the assessment in a way to figure out how do we solve this problem permanently, not just manage them according to guidelines we've been told to follow. And given that, you get a lot of creativity. And we've tested this in the past. If I ask 10 great guys, and I say, guys, this context me, men and women, that have established competency in the field, how would you solve this problem? And then what do you think of what this other person said? You get a lot of criticism and you don't really get the problem solved. Now I put these people in the same room and I said, look, guys, we have to cross the finish line. I need you guys to figure out how we're getting there. There's definitely some egos. There's definitely some, back and forth. But once everyone buys into the concept that we're solving the problem, get some really unique and cool stuff that comes out of it. And one of the ways I've been able to figure out is you have to be silly. You have to, throw curveballs at them.
I did not expect you to say, step 1, tune into your silly bone.
Yeah. Well, so what happens is when people laugh, it opens up their mind and their self-imposed barriers internally. So an example would be before the podcast, I got stuff not working and now I'm all stressed out. I don't want to look like an idiot when I talk to you and your audience, right? So now I'm guarded, right? Yeah. Versus, we start laughing and now I forget that I had all this problem and I realize, I'm really not an idiot. I'm capable of thinking. And that's why it's important to kind of laugh and have humor. And so what I did here at our facility, I created an environment where every day we say silly things to each other. And I love to wear very colorful shirts, especially when I see paint. Normally our scrubs are blue here, sometimes black. And most of that's because I work with IVs and the solutions. You have one material that doesn't stain as well, and also just kind of washes off easily because I tend to make a mess a lot. And so the idea then is we could interact with people. And then Fridays we wear some 100 colors in a shirt type of thing, and then gives people an opportunity to talk about how silly you look and what made you think you could leave the house wearing that shirt. And now we start having fun, and then you can explore different ideas.
Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. It's that time of year for front porch pumpkins and football barbecues, but here in the southern U.S., mosquitoes can still be an unwanted part of the equation. I've been using Insect's mosquito service since 2019, and I love that they guarantee their work and pollinators are always top of mind. But don't wait to get on their schedule. If you're in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama, give Insect a call, ensec.net. I'll be honest, there are not a ton of podcasts in my rotation, but the Jordan Harbinger Show is one of them. He and his guests weave story and thought with such conversational ease. You get sucked in the best way possible. I recently listened to episode 1031 with guest Dr. Sarah Hill about how birth control rewires women's brains. I love that he chose that topic, and it's so good that you'll want to take notes. I also really love episode 784 with Rami Romani, who shares incredible stories of ancient and modern-day Egypt, including a super intense escape story with him and his wife, and the truth about ancient Egyptian curses. I mean, just from those two episodes, you can see how varied his topics are. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting. There's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is also supported by the UWF Historic Trust. Don't pick another boring venue for your next work event. Check out one of the Pensacola Historic Trust's 12 museums. Now, if you watch the show on YouTube, you see the beautiful backdrop of Trader John's, the exhibit where I record the show inside the Pensacola Museum of History. Booking an event with the Trust will not just be a memorable event for your guests, but also support the efforts to keep Pensacola's historic charm preserved. Learn more at historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode. Are you a cash model? Is that why you can do this?
Yeah, you can. So the best thing for healthcare would be to get rid of insurance. You got to think of it this way. Imagine you went to a restaurant and you said, I want chicken. They said, I'm sorry, you can't eat chicken today because insurance doesn't allow for you to get that. And one of the things that many people don't realize is that the medical model is biased towards recommending services that insurance will cover.
Right.
And now when it gets to be something that, your life is on the line and you're going thinking, I'm at this giant center and I want what's best for me to survive, what you're not realizing is that the algorithms in place would be, we're going to do this bone marrow transplant because it's going to generate $500,000 of revenue for the institution. And we could do that 3 times, make $1.5 million that the insurance pays. And it won't impact your quality of life or extend your survival time. In the end, you're still going to die from that disease. Well, if people knew this in advance, no one would say to the congressperson, yeah, let's have insurance. Everyone would be lobbying, let's get rid of insurance. Let's have transparency. So like someone says, I want to do a lab test. You should be able to find out the price. Like you go online for Amazon, Costco, Walmart, any giant center, and you find prices for anything. People will come and say, what does that cost? And I have to say, I have to contact the lab and see what are they charging right now? Because I have to go to another company to figure out what they're charging so I can get back to you. It shouldn't be that complicated. It should be something where with all the like AI and computer technology, I should log in and you could say, hey, I want to know whatever this test is going to be. And in seconds have it. But because you have so many different labs and they'll have different ways of pricing, you have some of the large labs like Quest, LabCorp, that may have like 20 different prices.
Oh, yeah. And you can't call them. Like I've tried, I have more of like a performance approach to my own health. So I really don't find the typical doctor's appointments very satisfying because they're like, well, you're not obese, so keep that up. Bye. I'm like, thank you. Not what I was going for. And when I try to get that more detailed blood work done, I call around and I can't get it. So I have, kind of a creative workaround that I've discovered. But even those Quest labs, like I call, and if I can even reach anyone, I've even gone in person and they're like, we can't tell you until we run it. And it's like the biggest scam. So I think that people who are looking outside of the box in the terms of cancer treatment are probably open to the idea of a cash model. I wanted to ask you, are there any studies that show that exercise can prevent cancer?
Well, yeah, if we just look at just cancer rates, they're lower in people that exercise versus don't exercise. But I think one of the challenges might be, so think about it in a couple of ways, not just who gets cancer, but maybe who lives the longest. So what if like you got cancer, but it doesn't affect your quality of life and it doesn't affect your lifespan? Probably wouldn't matter to them too much, right? Versus if you got cancer and it's like you can't move anymore, right? Or you're going to lose years of your life. I think with cancer, there's a lot of fear. And so if everyone is staying on top of their health, so you run some type of screening test, whether it's every 2 years, every year based on risk factors. If you're paying attention to your body, I see people that say, yeah, I've had, blood coming out of my body, whether it's their mouth or some other opening, and they've had it for years and they never did anything. They never went to see a doctor. And then, well, of course, then things will just get worse with time. But I think if you look at the data in terms of longevity, one of the things that's maybe been the most disappointing for me as kind of like a recovering athlete is that the people that work out the hardest don't live the longest. And that was really a bummer for me because I was an intense competitor. I wanted to lift the biggest weights and all that. But what is clear is people that move. So, when we say people don't exercise, that's more of like formal structured exercise. But think about someone that isn't a blue collar worker. So they're not like doing heavy construction every day. They're not moving, furniture around every day, but they're walking, they're gardening, they're working around the house. Like there's physical activity happening. It's just not a planned event where I'm going to do, X amount of calories in 30 minutes or something like that. So it's not structured. Those people seem to have the best balance of physical stress that results in they don't do nothing, but they also don't overdo it. And as a result, there's less lifetime damage and they seem to live longer. So, now you got all these guys, spend all kinds of money on longevity, and regeneration. And it's exciting, but it's also kind of comical because in order to know if it's going to work, you would actually have to live longer than you were supposed to live. But if you don't know how long you were supposed to live, how you know how long, if it's working or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head when it comes to, it's just a big soup of confusion and systems and profit models and panic. And so I know we're running out of time, but I want to ask you about the panic part. Even though it's not directly related to exercise, it's part of the soup. And that's when you get a cancer diagnosis, there is an immediate reaction to be like, 911, house is on fire, do not pass go straight to whatever the doctor has told you to do, whether that's chemo or what have you. What amount of panic is the right panic?
Well, so I guess it's informed decision-making or maybe educated decision-making. So anytime someone gets diagnosed with cancer, it's definitely overwhelming and there's definitely a lot of fear. And that definitely stimulates, like the typical behavior is maybe a little bit of shock, like disbelief. Then you're going on Google or Bing or some search engine. You say, what is prostate cancer, let's say, and then it's prostate cancer treatment. And then what you're not seeing is the money spent on putting those sites in front of you for the Google ads and stuff like that, or the Bing ads. So you get a biased assessment of what to do. And what really should be happening is people should be saying, okay, what is going on inside of me that could have led to this cancer? What I hear a lot of times people say, well, I was perfectly healthy and then I got cancer.
Right.
Well, that's really not accurate because the DNA damage indicates that something wasn't right. It was oxidative stress, and we know over 90% of cancers, the genes that are driving that cancer, the people weren't born with. So that means something from the environment damaged that individual's DNA. And that something is really two categories. It's organisms or the microbiome, and that microbiome could be in the mouth, could be from the blood, could be from the urogenital region, could be from the GI tract, lower GI tract, or it could be chemicals, and that's the PFAS compounds, mycotoxins, heavy metals, and environmental toxins. So what should happen is right at the very beginning, once a patient's diagnosed, they should be tested for those areas, the organisms and the chemicals. And the rationale is they not only can cause cancer, they could stimulate cancer growth, and they could interfere with treatment responses. And one of the really dumb things I see all the time is you see people told treatments. You can't recommend a treatment in a vacuum. You have to understand the context of what's in that individual's body. So let's just say I have a man with prostate cancer and he has an infection in his prostate. You can remove the prostate and then cancer's gone, except that the bacteria that were there now spread into other areas of the body. And now something else happens later. So that's not an intelligent strategy, but that's a strategy that makes money. You're not eliminating problems permanently. You're just switching things around a little bit.
I think there's so many complexities to cancer that the average person is not aware of. Like, I think in our pre-chat, you said there was, did you say there was 1,000 types of breast cancer? Is that the right number?
100,000. Yeah.
100,000 types of breast cancer? Okay, so just that alone really helps us to understand that this is a much more nuanced situation within a person. And what I love is that your center sends out these emails that I feel like just sort of drip information that can be helpful to help our friends who have cancer or help our family members, or God forbid that we would experience that ourselves. And information helps mitigate fear. So I really appreciate, I guess this is a long-winded way of saying I appreciate your emails. I don't know.
Thank you. Well, that made me think of some things, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. But so people oftentimes ask questions like, what's the treatment success and so forth. And there's a free ebook they could download. You have to put in your name and email and that stuff. And you could do that, or I could just tell you like the two main questions every patient or the family member should ask of any medical professional. And the first is, how will you fight the cancer in my body? Because we want to move away from success rates for label and talk about specifics for what an individual is dealing with. And then the second question is, what will you do when this doesn't work? Because everyone forgets that the data overall shows that the death rates aren't decreasing. So all these new drugs, all these different therapies, all these procedures that everyone's talking about, add them all up, zero impact. Just like we mentioned earlier on about obesity. It's grown exponentially. Things like diabetes have quadrupled over the last 30 years, despite all the diabetes drugs. So this just kind of shows you the medical system is not about optimal results like crossing the finish line. The medical system has evolved to what generates revenue. And so knowing that, patients should go in to assess, is this center or is this professional going to be able to help me? So if they have a plan before they know your name, then you're a number. You're not going to get the best results. And if they could basically articulate the reason why I'm recommending, whether it's chemo, vitamin C, or whatever the agent might be, is because you have this mutation, and I have data showing that this works for that mutation driving your cancer. And then if that doesn't work, well, I have these other solutions that may work better for you. That would be an ideal sort of answer. But most people say, I've never heard that before from any medical professional. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is good information to know. We had another guest on the show a while back that taught us to ask about the number needed to treat when prescribed a medicine from your doctor, which was like just a lovely, simple question, easy to remember. How many people have to take this medicine and endure the potential side effects before one person can experience the benefit that said medicine is advertising? And I thought, wow, that's just so good. So I think you've given us that equivalency for cancer treatment, that it's incredibly specific to the person, that the cancer could be a number of things, and that detailed testing is important. Can you tell people as we wrap up where they can get on that email list that we talked about, and if they want to inquire about becoming a patient, or if they want to help someone they know become a patient, what's that process?
They could just go to Causenta.com, and that's Causcenta.com. And if they want to get started, literally on the first page says, let's get started, and just fill out the name and email, and someone will contact them from my organization. And then towards the bottom of the page, there's a way to sign up for newsletters or emails. We do a lot of stuff besides cancer, but because so many people contact us with cancer, it's kind of like the majority of what we focus on, because there's always things coming out. I'm like, oh my God, that's so stupid. I can't believe that someone's putting this out there. Well, I mean, think of it this way. You have your own health background, and imagine you have real world experience seeing yourself and other people accomplish certain goals and results. And I come along and I'm like, hey, just drink this bottle of water and you're going to add 10 pounds of muscle. There's no way it's that easy, because with all the water I drank, I would, have, all this extra muscle or something. And then anyone with actual experience knows it takes a little bit more effort than a lot of the information that's sometimes disseminated. The reason why it's disseminated the way it is because most people are so challenged for time or challenged in other ways. They're looking for fast, easy solutions. And the copywriting and some of the marketing efforts that are out there now, they're very compelling and very convincing. But they oversimplify things that may make people go in the wrong direction with their healthcare.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and how you're helping us kind of just rethink all of this as well. It's a very empowering thought, and I hope that people will get on your email list and continue to educate themselves, because I think it does take those layers for all of us.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Just so everybody knows, you're pretty cool. You were very patient with me. And I was a complete wreck at the beginning, and thank you for holding my hand through everything. And I invite you and your husband to come on down. I always tell people, find out for yourself. See what it's like, because the stuff we're doing right now, I'm really excited. January 1, we're going to make some major announcements that's going to really disrupt healthcare. Yeah, I like to disrupt things, but in a positive way. I don't want to disrupt things where people are harmed or people are inconvenienced, but I want to be able to disrupt things in a way where people will get faster results at a lower price point, and results in a way it's not just fighting cancer, but hey, I'm stronger or I'm smarter. Now to me, that's where we are today with medicine. We can improve multiple areas of your health, not just hey, I'm really glad you don't have breast cancer anymore. It's hey, you look better than you ever did, 20 years ago, and you're smarter than ever. And the breast cancer, we're not even worried about that because that's gone by the wayside. That's where we should be right now.
I will be on the edge of my seat waiting for that announcement. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate it. This was great. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with a medical doctor who has served as an expert in medical litigation and as a consultant to the FBI and U.S. Department of Justice. We talk about, is there hope for the American medical system? That's episode 242. Remember, a healthy collection of ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts for the show shows high-level prospective guests that this show is worth their time, which means you get even better content to get curious on. So please leave a rating and review to help me bring you the guests that you deserve. And stay tuned next week for a remastered favorite with the Accidental Swingers. Until then, keep it curious.